Alrighty, before I get too into this, I'm just going to check if the audio is working, as I always do, using my mobile phone. Let's see. Okay, I'll take it that it's working. Yes, I'm just back from Glasgow. Just back from Glasgow. I was out with my ex-wife. That's right. Got married in my early 20s. I didn't really go to plan, but we remain good friends, and it was a good meeting actually, because we got to talk about our past and everything like that. And I think it's just part of growing up and growing into a more mature person. That you can deal with those things, those kinds of experiences in a mature way. And we discussed some of that, and then just spoke about what's going on in our lives. And it was, it's always very humbling and part of a sort of reconciliatory experience, that to meet someone from your past and to really just process the emotions and everything. And I suppose, I don't know, it's kind of like what I'm doing here, just trying to process this. I really don't want to actually look at this report, but I feel like I have to. And there might be something in that, something that can be gotten out of it. Interestingly enough, as I hold up this order of service for my brother's funeral, it has the Lord is my shepherd and Amazing Grace here. Lord is my shepherd, featured in my previous video where Thunderfoot, a famous YouTube atheist, really railed against the idea of the Lord as my shepherd, because what does a shepherd do? It leads lambs to the slaughter. Having a really uncharitable take on that one. So this came through in the mail today, and these are the final reports on just what exactly happened. Now, I went out for Greek food. I don't know if you're familiar with Greek cuisine, but it's it's fine. It's a little different from what we're used to. So this is going to be a healing glass of whiskey to soothe my stomach. A little bit of famous grouse, nothing too fancy. So I don't imagine this is going to make for particularly nice reading, but I think it'll give some kind of context. It's the ultimate and what happened in those final moments, I suppose. So this comes from Police Scotland. Road policing collision investigation report. I think one of them's to do with the car that was involved in the accident, and the other one deals with my brother and the circumstances that led to the collision. So I'll just have a little peek to see the contents, because it came in 2 packages. Okay. Says here, the collision investigation report has been compiled by the above named officers and is believed to be truthful based on the available knowledge of the accident at the time of preparation. It is presented on the understanding that anything later learned about the incident may influence the findings and conclusions already reached. Independent report check and verification. The collision investigation report was checked and verified by the checking officer, who at the time of the independent check took into consideration all evidential items: albums of photographs, photographic DVDs, scale plans, 3D scene images, and any other pertinent productions or documents which were known by them to exist. Calculations contained within the report also verified by checking officer. It should be noted that the officer carrying out the independent check will not normally have been involved in the investigation and cannot therefore speak to the actual events contained in the report. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, let's see. Constable, I'll leave his name out, has completed 20 years police service, having served some 12 years of his service within road policing. During his time in road policing, he has been involved in the investigation of numerous incidents of road death and serious road collisions. He is currently a road patrol officer who carries out collision investigation duties as and when required. This is just sort of like a CV for him, isn't it? Yeah, that just kind of speaks to the qualifications of the officers. At about 20 past 6 on Monday, the 4th of November, the now deceased Robert Taylor was walking south on the B780 Dalry Road, Kilburnie, approximately 220 metres south of Loading Bank, when he was struck by a silver-coloured Toyota Yaris motor car, registration mark, and I won't put out the registration. He was removed to Queen Elizabeth Hospital in Glasgow by ambulance. Police officers at the scene closed the road in order to preserve evidence at the locus. Robert Taylor succumbed to his injuries the following day. The locus for the accident is the B780, and the B780 has been known for a lot of road traffic accidents. There's a woman who lives on the road. It's very sparsely populated. It's just between the two towns here, Kilburnie and Dalry. And she says she's getting sick and tired of people showing up at her door bloodied, like something needs to be done about the safety of that road. Dalry Road extends generally north to south within a semi-rural location between the towns of Kilburnie to the north and Dalry to the south. It is a two-way undivided carriageway with one lane in each direction for northbound and southbound traffic. The lanes are divided by hazard warning lines, which are long white lines with short gaps and are the road engineers' way of warning of inherent hazards ahead, which on this occasion were junctions. Reflective road studs are situated between each white line, which mark the middle of the road and are an aid to drivers travelling along in the hours of darkness. Okay, so it's just kind of describing the road conditions there. And there's a picture of where the accident sort of occurred at the 3-yard kind of line as you come into Kilburnie. Okay. There is no street lighting at the locus of the crash. Yep. There's a low curb there. So it's just really describing the conditions right now of the road. Weather conditions. The road surface is of tarmac construction with a stone chip dressing and some reinstalments evident. However, these had no bearing on the collision. The road has a slight crown chamber to assist with water dispersal. Oh yeah, that describes a slight hump in the road. At the time of the collision, it was dark with light winds. The road surface was damp and the outside temperature was recorded as being approximately 80 degrees Celsius. Traffic conditions were moderately busy due to the route being used for a diversion at the time. Interestingly enough, the woman that struck my brother never drove that road. It was only because of a diversion that she actually took it. Speed limit of 30 miles an hour. Then it just talks about it actually gives me the name of the person. I mean, should I really have that knowledge? Southbound drivers, and it names the person, approached the locus on a long straight section of carriageway whilst travelling south along Dalry Road to the junction of Loading Bank. The drivers would be assisted by streetlight. Having entered an unlit national speed limit section of the road, a driver would have had the opportunity of a 220 metres south to the location of the crash. However, this would be limited to the area in front of the car illuminated by their headlights. Blah, 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 blah. Southbound pedestrians approach This is my brother's approach to the locus on a long straight section of carriageway. Having entered the unlit section of carriageway, a pedestrian would have the opportunity of a view of 370 metres to the slight right-hand bend. Similarly, the pedestrian would have a view north along Dalry Road to the lit section of road. Okay. So it sounds like my brother was walking down towards Dalry. Because he was walking southbound and she was driving southbound. The locus was examined and relevant measures obtained. The examination of the locus revealed items of evidence linked to the incident. The items highlighted in bold are reproduced on the scale plan drawing. Scuff mark. A scuff mark labelled FS was located on the southbound lane of Dalry Road in the unlit section. It was positioned 220 metres south of the junction with the loading bank and 0.5 metres east of the centre line. This was identified as a foot scuff mark and consisted of skin and body matter from Robert's left foot. The mark was created when the Toyota Yaris collided with Robert, who was barefoot, causing his left standing foot to be swept from beneath him. Due to the movement of the foot, skin and body matter was deposited onto the roadway, which can be linked to a corresponding injury on the sole of Robert's left foot. This mark identifies the point of impact between the Toyota Yaris and Robert Taylor. A large quantity of silver paint flecks, the first of which has been labelled PF, were located on the unlit section of the Rye Road. They commenced on the southbound lane, 5.7 metres south of the point of impact, and extended 122 metres south along both sides of the road to the resultant position of the Toyota Yaris motor. These paint flecks were a similar colour to that of the Toyota Yaris motor car and can be linked to corresponding damage observed on its front bumper. Fragments of clear plastic, which have been labelled HL, were located on the northbound lane on the unlit section of the Rye Road. They were approximately 74 metres south of the point of impact. These fragments of plastic were similar to that from the front headlight lenses of the Toyota Yaris motor car and can be linked to the corresponding damage on its front offside. Iron brew bottle. An empty plastic iron brew drinks bottle, which has been labelled IB on the scale plan drawing, was located on the unlit section of the Rye Road on the west verge. It was approximately 11 metres south of the point of impact. This was believed to have been carried by Robert prior to the collision. Well, that's a good Scottish last drink. Iron brew. I think, I don't know, I don't really drink iron brew, I prefer my whiskey. So there's a picture of the car here. Now that car doesn't look significantly damaged, does it? It looks like this is the point of impact here, and you can see the window has been hit. I don't know if the lighting's good, but you can see the window's been hit, this side of the car. The silver-coloured Toyota Yaris motor car involved in the incident was examined at the locus by constables. The following damage marks were observed. Cleaning marks were located on the front offside section of the front bumper. It was located between 0.25 and 0.28 metres from the offside of the car, between heights 0.39 and 0.44 metres from the roadside surface. Note, a cleaning mark is created when an object has come into contact with another object, and in so doing removes the surface dirt from there. This mark was created when Robert Taylor's clothing came into contact with it and wiped across its surface at the point of impact. Paint flecked from the offside section of the bumper. The damage was located between the offside edge of the bumper, which extended 0.28 meters toward the near side. Blah, 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 blah. This is consistent with the paint flecks observed on the roadway and on the rear of Robert Taylor's trousers. Black coloured thread found adhering to the gap between the front bumper and front offside wing. This thread is similar in colour to the trousers worn by Robert, and it shows you a picture of the thread in between the thing. Okay. This damage is consistent with having struck Robert Taylor, causing it to break and fall onto the roadway, as observed. A dent with cleaning marks was located in the front offside of the bonnet. This mark was created when Robert Taylor came into contact with it as it was struck by the front of the car. Blue and black coloured friction burns were observed on the leading edge of the offside A-pillar. The friction marks were created by the blue t-shirt and black leather belt worn by Robert Taylor as he struck by the front of the car. The heat generated between the car and the pedestrian transferred the characteristics of the clothes, and you can see that there. My goodness, this is quite forensic. Windscreen shattered in a radial pattern. Hair and body matter were adhering to the indentation, which is consistent with having struck Robert Taylor's head as he was thrown onto the front of the car following the initial contact. Offside A pillar dented along its length. Blah, 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 blah. Leading edge of the roof was dented. Contact with Robert. Offside. So it just kind of circles all the points here. So it was struck by this side of the car, and it just circles all the points of impact there. This pattern of damage is consistent with colliding with a stationary pedestrian, or a pedestrian walking directly away from or towards the car. The interior windscreen, although shattered, appeared to have been in a clean pre-collision condition with no obstructions. The headlights for the car had been switched off, but they were on at the initial attendance. Gear lever in neutral, parking brake applied. Seat belts were used. The Toyota sustained minimal front damage, which would suggest a relatively low impact speed considering the speed limit for this type of vehicle was 60 miles an hour. At high impact speeds in excess of 60 kilometers per hour or 37 miles per hour, an adult pedestrian will generally rotate about the head contact point, resulting in the body angulating about the leading edge of the roof. This means that as Robert did not pass over the roof of the car and was instead carried upon the car, then it is unlikely that the speed of the Toyota Yaris would have been in excess of 37 miles an hour. A headlight test was carried out in order to establish the area in the road ahead, which would be covered by normal dipped headlights. The test was carried out in darkness and in similar weather conditions as those experienced on the date of the collision. This revealed that a pedestrian in dark clothing would potentially start to become visible within 25 meters in front of the car. This test was carried out when the author's eyes had time to adjust to the darkness, whereas the driver's eyes were still adjusting and may not have been able to see so far. Using an estimated speed, it is possible to calculate the approximate reaction time which the driver would have had. In fairness to her, an approach speed of 37 miles an hour will be used, as this will ultimately give a shorter reaction time. So then I do like a little calculation to work out the reaction time. And then, weirdly enough, they changed the woman's name, first name here. So it says she had like 1 second of reaction time to react. The officer is not qualified to prove the derivative of the mathematical formula used in these calculations. If this is required, the services of a mathematician should be enlisted. While at the locus of the crash, the constables examined the outer clothing worn by Robert at the time of the collision for evidence of contact damage. Blue t-shirt. A light blue polo t-shirt worn by Robert was found on the roadway at the area of blood-marked BD. This t-shirt had no reflective qualities and would have been cut from his body by paramedics. The t-shirt was heavily blood-stained and as such was not examined for contact damage. A pair of black trousers with a leather belt attached worn by Robert Taylor was found on the roadway at the area of blood-marked BD. The trousers and belt had no reflective qualities. The belt had been undone and the trousers had been cut from his body by attending paramedics. And you can see them. They've been cut. The black leather belt was found to have a friction burn on the outer surface, a hole in the right leg at rear crease, scuff mark and tear on the front, trousers torn on the back, leg crease, horizontal silver paint transfer, scuff friction mark on the back of the right leg, silver paint transfer on the back of the left leg between the rear crease and outer seam, walking stick. Robert Taylor was carrying a brown coloured wooden walking stick. That's a family heirloom. I don't remember getting it back. That was my papa's. That was Robert's papa's. Robert was found carrying a brown coloured wooden walking stick with him at the time of the collision. The walking stick was 0.89 metres in length, had no reflective qualities. The walking stick was observed to have scuff marks on the handle and was fractured 0.1 metres from the bottom, with silver paint adhering to the surface around the brake. The pattern of damage listed above is consistent with Robert Taylor being struck from behind by the Toyota Yaris motor car, causing the paint transfer. And this is something that bothers me. As I said, I don't know if I said it, but it was kind of like in my head that maybe Robert meant to die. Like he purposed to take his life. But he clearly didn't. He was walking on the side of the road and this person's not seen him and crashed into him from behind. And he would have heard the car coming and probably would have thought, I'm safe, I'm on the side of the road, person has their lights on, whatever. And he wasn't. He got struck with a car. And, you know, I'll make some concluding remarks after, but it's a lesson, you know what I mean? It's a lesson worth sharing, you know? I guess it just comes down to road safety in this one, but there's more to be said. Dash cam footage. The author of this report was commuting to work at around 06:15 hours on the day and drove southbound on Dorai Road, Kilburnie, towards the locus of the collision. He had a front-facing dash cam fitted to the windscreen in his vehicle. This camera was recording footage onto a secure SD memory card at a rate of 30 frames per second. The footage shows the following. Date showing. These are the last pictures of my brother. This officer actually pictured my brother, yeah. Timings, approximately 8 hours, 27 minutes behind. Robert Taylor is first observed walking south on the near side of the southbound lane of Dorai Road at the junction with Priory Court near the Thames filling station. There is no footway at this location. Right. So that's just like over there. That's just like a stone's throw from where I live. And I don't know if you can see that picture very well, probably not on that. But there's that white marks there. That's his shoes and his feet there. So my brother's just kind of like, don't know if I can make that clearer by hiding any darkening this a little bit. No, kind of that figure there. That's one of the last pictures of my brother there. So he was standing at the side of that road at 9 o'clock. Is this date? This guy's camera's got the wrong date. So I don't know if that's at the right time. Robert Taylor continues south near to the east verge of the Undereye Road. It was not noticed at the time, but it can be seen in the footage that he is barefooted and is carrying a walking stick in his left hand and a bottle in his right. So he's been out there the whole time. From analysis of the available evidence at the scene, including vehicle and clothes examined, this incident can be reconstructed as follows. At about 6:15 in the morning of Monday, the 4th of November, 2019, the author of this report was commuting to work in his private vehicle, which is fitted with a front-facing dash cam, whilst travelling south along Douai Road, Kilbirnie, within the built-up area. The author observed Robert Taylor walking south on Douai Road at the junction with Briery Court. Robert Taylor was walking on the near side of the southbound lane next to the verge and was wearing a blue t-shirt, black trousers. Robert Taylor was barefooted and was carrying a walking stick in his left hand and a bottle of Iron Brew in his right. Robert Taylor continued south along Douai Road. At 20 minutes past 6 on the same date, this individual was driving south on Douai Road, Kilbirnie, in a silver-coloured Toyota Yaris motor car. She entered the unlit national speed limit section of Douai Road to the south of the loading bank, having travelled only 220 metres south of the loading bank, and whilst travelling fully within the southbound lane, the front offside of her car struck Robert, who was 0.5 metres east of the centre line, facing south on Douai Road. Okay, 0.5 metres east of the centre line. So does that mean he was walking pretty much in the middle of the road? The first point of contact was on the front bumper on its leading edge, located 0.25 off from the offside of the car. Goodness, this is dry. This caused a cleaning mark on the front bumper as the surface dirt was wiped from the front of the car, and paint flecks came onto his trouser legs. This caused Robert's left foot to be swept from underneath him, creating scuff on the road, which was deposited onto the surface. The damage to the front bumper caused paint flecks from the front of the car, which began to fall to the roadway as the Toyota Yaris continued south on Douai Road. A plastic Iron Brew bottle carried by Roberts thrown onto the west verge. Robert Taylor continued onto the bonnet of the car, smashing the offside headlight lens and transferring a thread from his trouser leg into the gap between the offside bumper and the leading ledge of the front offside wing. He crossed over the bonnet of the car, cleaning the surface dirt and denting the panel located here. Robert Taylor's head then struck the windscreen, creating a radial pattern of damage and an indentation. Robert Taylor's blue t-shirt and black leather belt from his trousers created blue and black coloured friction burn marks on the A-pillar as he continued up the offside edge windscreen of the car. He then scuffed the outside door mirror and made contact with and dented the leading edge of the roof on the offside of the roof line above the driver's door, most likely with his shoulder and right arm. Robert Taylor was carried in the front of the car before being deposited onto, that's a very kind word, before being deposited onto the roadway 94 metres south of the point of impact. That's some distance, man. 94 meters. Where he struck his head, creating a body scuff mark as skin and hair was transferred onto the road surface. To be honest, that's what probably killed him. There's just so many wee things that could have changed, you know? So many wee things that could have changed. Like if he was struck with a car and remained on the bonnet, you know? Like if he wasn't deposited onto the road, if the stop had been a little, you know, these things don't happen, but if she'd continued to drive and lose momentum gradually, instead of driving another 94 meters and hitting the brakes and smacking him onto the road, you know? So he hit the road surface and continued 4 meters south before coming to a rest. Robert Taylor was removed from the locus by ambulance, however subsequently died of his injuries on the 5th of November. The collision is a result of Robert walking on an unlit section of road in the path of a southbound Toyota Yaris. He was walking on an unlit section of road, only half a metre east of the white centre line, with his back to the traffic, whilst wearing dark-coloured clothing with no reflective qualities. I guess that could be a suicide attempt, couldn't it? Walking on the road, and he would have heard it unless he had his earphones in, but there's nothing said about earphones. The Toyota Yaris sustained minimal frontal damage as a result of the collision, which would suggest a relatively low impact speed. At high impact speeds, or speeds in excess of 60 kilometers per hour or 37 miles per hour, an adult pedestrian will generally rotate at the head at the point of impact, but because this didn't happen, it's believed she was traveling 37 miles an hour or less. It has been established that the headlights on the Yaris covered an area of 25 meters in front of the car. She would have 1.5 seconds north of the point of impact. When Robert started to come into view, it's generally accepted that the reaction time for the driver is 1 or 2 seconds. As can be seen, this would give the driver insufficient time and distance to react appropriately to the unexpected hazards in the road ahead. Had her speed of approach been any faster than 37, then her available time would further reduce proportionately. So that's the first one. It's quite dry. It's very forensic in terms of measurements and things like this. And I think this is the one maybe that pertained most to the car. I think the harder to read one will be this one here. Yeah, obviously this is the post-mortem report. Robert Taylor, Kirkland Road, Kilburnie. Background circumstances. We were informed that this 33-year-old man had a history of schizophrenia and was prescribed propranolol, sertraline, and zuclopenthixol. He was last seen by a psychiatrist in April 2019. At 06:20 hours on the 4th of November 2019, he was struck by a car in the middle of the B780 Dalry Road, 200 metres east of Eastmeans Farm. Prior to the collision, he had apparently been seen jumping out in front of cars at the same location, and at 06:20 hours, he was struck by a silver Toyota Yaris that had been travelling at approximately 35 to 40 miles per hour, and he was subsequently found lying at the side of the road on the grass verge. An ambulance was summoned, and Mr. Taylor was taken to hospital. Information obtained by accessing the hospital medical notes, online photocopies, only limited notes available, revealed that this man was diagnosed with the following: a head injury Glasgow coma scale 6 out of 15 at the scene. What's 6 out of 15 on the Glasgow coma scale? Probably not good, I'm guessing. With subarachnoid and subdural hemorrhage and brain contusions. There were also fractures of the skull and zygoma. Well, I know what a subdural hematoma is, and it's not a great thing. But subarachnoid and subdural hemorrhage and brain contusions, that's not good. He also had pulmonary lacerations and a left neck of femur fracture at 20:56, 4 minutes to 9. The body was that of an adult male measuring 6'2" in height and approximately 81 kilograms, just over 12 stone. He had waxy dark brown hair, which was just below the level of the ears, moderate length facial stubble, and natural teeth in reasonable condition. There was an identification band on the right wrist. There were no petechial hemorrhages. The nose was intact. Rigor mortis was present. Hypostasis was on the back of the body. In keeping with recent medical intervention, the following is noted. Tubes in each nostril associated with packing. An endotracheal tube, a dressing over the left shoulder underlying which was a needle puncture mark. Cannulae in the back of the left hand, in the right side of the groin, and in right wrist. Cannulae, I don't know, that must be like where you put a drip or something. Needle puncture marks in the right elbow crease, in the back of the right hand, in the front of the right forearm, in the right side of the groin, and in the left elbow crease. In the left outer chest, approximately 8 centimeters below the axillary crease, a stapled thoracotomy wound, which ran from the anterior axillary line and extended upwards and backwards onto the back and measured 23 centimeters in length. At the anterior edge of this wound was a further stapled incision wound measuring 2.5 centimeters in length, and there was surrounding bruising measuring up to 6 centimeters in width. On the outer aspect of the left side of the lower part of the chest, 22 centimeters below the axillary crease, a chest drain sutured in position. A dressing over the left elbow. On the outer aspect of the right side of the chest in the mid-axillary line, approximately 12 centimeters below the axillary crease, a sutured chest drain. So imagine this is from injuries to the thorax. He also had some kind of internal issues. I don't know if his lungs were filling with fluid or whatnot, and this needed to be drained. I guess it's going to tell me the injuries. The following marks and injuries were noted. Head and neck, a left black eye comprising purple-red bruising in an area 5 centimeters across by 4 centimeters up and down, with a laceration at the corner of the eye measuring 1 centimeter in length. That's right, he had like a nick out of the side of his eye there, the flesh. At the inner aspect of the right eye, faint red bruising. On the center left cheek, patchy red-purple bruising in an area 5 centimeters up, down, and 6 centimeters across. On the left side of the scalp, extending from the left temporal region and continuing backwards and up toward the midline, patchy red bruising in an area of 17 centimeters across by at least 9 centimeters up, down, and within which a ragged stapled laceration measuring approximately 5 centimeters in length. Yeah, when I saw my brother, he had like a question mark here, and that's something they do. It's an emergency procedure, I think, to alleviate swelling in the brain or something like this. It's got a particular name that I forget, but he had that. Says obviously they were trying to do what they could to make sure his brain would function if possible. Describing his face, he looked fine. Like this describes a rash and stuff like that. It looked really good considering, to be honest. Trunk. On the outer aspect of the right side of the lower half of his chest, striated abrasions running down the forearms and the area. On the upper part of the left side of the back, just to the left of the midline, a series of very superficial abrasions. Just below the left axilla, a red bruise. Left arm on the left elbow extending onto the lower part of the upper arm, and the upper part of the lower arm, scattered superficial abrasions. On front of the left wrist, superficial abrasion. On the back of the hand, over the middle ring, index and little fingers, scattered abrasions. Right arm, again, just an abrasion. Just little superficial marks. Right leg, on the knee, 4 abrasions. On the front of the lower left shin, patchy abrasion. There's some abrasions on his leg. Left leg, on the knee, a little abrasion. And on top of the foot, a patchy abrasion. Yeah, nothing wrong there. Head and neck. This is really what did him in, was the injuries to the head. It's always to the head, you know. If you ever get struck by a car, obviously if it hits you from the back, there isn't much you can do, but if it hits you side on, I think they give you advice on how to roll up the bonnet and stuff like that. You can look it up, but it's not really a situation you should never be in. Within the scalp, there was the widespread bruising throughout the left side, and including the left temporalis muscle. Within the skull, there was a hinge-type fracture. This extended from the outer aspect of the left middle fossa and passed obliquely through the floor of the fossa, front to back, and continued through the sella turcica, and into the anterior part of the right petrous temporal bone, before ending in the lateral wall of the right middle fossa. The fracture measured approximately 17 centimeters in length. On the left side of the skull, involving the outer aspect of the left middle fossa, there was fragmentation of the bone associated with the fracture in a total area of 5 times 3 centimeters. There was also a fine line fracture, in the floor of the left anterior fossa, measuring 2 centimeters. The brain was swollen, and there was patchy subarachnoid hemorrhage, mainly over the anterior aspects of both temporal lobes, with a small amount over the superior aspect of the cerebral hemispheres and the vermis. On sectioning, there was extensive contusions and probable associated infarction at the base of the brain and the temporal regions. On sectioning, there were also possible fine hemorrhages in the corpus callosum and basal ganglia. Samples were retained for neuropathology. See below. The mouth, tongue, pharynx, larynx, and thyroid gland were normal. The cervical spine had no palpable injury. So obviously all that would do you in. Like any one of those things, a skull fracture in general can be life-threatening. But if you've got all that bleeding going on in your head, it can be tricky to deal with. Chest. The ribs were intact. The chest drains had been removed prior to examination. The chest cavities each contained a small amount of blood-stained fluid. There were no adhesions. The trachea and major bronchi contained a small amount of blood-stained mucus. The lungs were very oedematous and congested, with probable bilateral bronchopneumonia. In the upper lobe of the left lung were 3 sutured lacerations. All right, so he obviously had to get some kind of lung surgery, which again, this is all bad. Even if he had survived head injuries, for your lungs to be in such an awful way, I mean, that would have been something, a miracle in itself to come back from. In the upper lobe of the left lung were 3 sutured lacerations measuring between 2 and 4 centimeters in length, and there was surrounding hemorrhage. The right lung also had patchy contusions. The pericardial sac was normal. That's surprising. The heart was of normal size and configuration, and on section in the myocardium was normal, as were the cardiac valves and atria. There was mild athermomatous narrowing of the left anterior descending and left circumflex coronary arteries, but the right main branch was widely patent. The thoracic aorta was intact and normal. The esophagus was normal. I want to take a note of that, actually. Mild narrowing of the left anterior descending and left circumflex coronary. I don't know, is that something a sonography test can identify? Because there's a history of heart conditions in my family, and I just wonder, I might have that too. Abdomen. The abdomen. The peritoneal cavity was dry and free of abrasions. The stomach contained a small amount of brown fluid, and the mucosa was normal. The small and large bowels were normal. The liver, pancreas, spleen, gallbladder, and adrenal glands were normal. Both kidneys were normal. The bladder contained a small amount of urine. There were no palpable fractures of pelvis or spine. Further investigations. Heart. The myocardium shows no significant abnormality. Lungs. Patchy claps and areas of alveolar hemorrhage along with early bronchopneumonia. Liver. Mild discohesion and fragmentation of the perivenular hepatocytes, mild steatosis. Kidneys, no significant abnormality. Pancreas, autolyzed. An outline of the basic architecture is preserved and shows no significant abnormality. Toxicology. Femoral blood and urine supplies, along with hospital blood samples, were retained and analysed for alcohol, drugs of abuse, and prescription drugs. The results are as follows. PM blood preserved. Zaclopentixol present. Paracetamol 12 milligrams. Hospital blood. Ketamine 0.16 mg, morphine 0.6, sertraline 0.2. That's just what they gave him at the hospital. My brother wouldn't know how to get ketamine. Neuropathology. Samples of blood were referred for formal neuropathological assessment. A summary of the report is as follows. Neuropathological examination has determined a combination of severe blunt force and rotational head injury. There are cortical contusions and subarachnoid hemorrhage, and there are cerebellar contusions related to the base of skull fracture. In addition, there is diffuse traumatic axonal injury. There appears to be significant brain swelling secondary to the contusions, resulting in global ischemic brain injury and areas of early infarction. Conclusions. We were informed that this 33-year-old man was struck by a car in the morning of 4th November 2019 and died in hospital the following day. Post-mortem examination revealed that this man had sustained multiple injuries, the most severe of which involved his head. In terms of the head injury, there was extensive scalp bruising, mainly on the left side, and associated with a laceration, and in the underlying skull, there was a long fracture which extended along the skull base, hinge-type fracture, and there was also a fracture of the left cheekbone. Neuropathological examination of the brain revealed a severe injury with subarachnoid hemorrhage and bruising, in addition to diffuse traumatic axonal injury and secondary brain swelling, the latter resulting in ischemic brain injury and areas of early infarction. In the chest, there were lacerations within the left lung and bruising with the right. Elsewhere, there were a number of bruises and abrasions on the trunk and limbs, and clinically this man was also diagnosed with a fracture of the left leg. Given the type and distribution of injuries, they would be in keeping with this man having been involved in a road traffic collision as described, and the head injury was considered the main factor of his death. Terminally, he had also developed bronchopneumonia, a not uncommon complication in cases of head trauma associated with a period of unconsciousness. Toxicological analysis was performed, and this detected his prescribed medication in his blood, cyclopentixol and sertraline, in addition to ketamine and morphine, which were presumably administered in hospital. He had no significant natural disease, and there were no other significant findings. Cause of death, primary cause, head injury due to road traffic collision. And then there's some appendices here. Summary of findings, sample and analysis. So toxicology report here. Just looking for things. Little alcohol. And then the rest is just what we got here. Paracetamol present. Blah, 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 blah. Yep, just talking about the different breakdowns. So the ketamine coming from intravenous administration, morphine, again from the hospital, sertraline as an antidepressant. Full records of the notes taken and the preparation of this report are available at the laboratory. Brain slices, this must be from the scan. Three-year-old male struck by car, Glasgow coma scale 6 at scene, limited medical history but died in hospital the following day. Scalp laceration, yep, we know this. Prominent subarachnoid hemorrhages, particularly over the convexities. Vascular congestion and the parasagittal white matter with no definite hemorrhage. There's extensive ischemic injury throughout the neurocortical ribbon and hippocampi, the affected neurons having shrunken nuclei and cytoplasmic eosinophilia. Reperfusion hemorrhage is noted in areas. There is confirmation of cortical contusions. Throughout the white matter, there are eosinophilic retraction balls seen in the corpus callosum and internal capsule. All right. So that's pretty much fancy doctor talk before he got smashed in the head. So I'm just going to take a little whiskey here. I was at a funeral on Friday, and it was my my cousin's mother-in-law. She was a lovely woman. I only met her a couple of times at parties and things, but I do remember her telling my dad, who's since passed away, that she saw me a distance, a ways off, and she saw the way I was carrying myself, and she didn't want me to be so hunched over and stuff, and want me to walk my shoulders back and chin up, you know, carry myself with confidence. I just remember hearing that, and it's always stayed with me, you know. the idea that she was seeing me from afar and had that positive thing to say about me. And I thought a wee pleasant note about how I hope she still does that, you know, even though she's passed on, she can look down on those that she loves with positive regard. I mean, the reason I can keep my composure about this, the reason I can talk about these things is because I believe in something bigger than all this. You know what I mean? I believe that Robert's life isn't over, you know? I have to. I don't want to say I have to believe that, but I do believe that. I was a little bit annoyed at first when I thought that Robert was just walking at the side of the road and had been struck by a car. You know, and hadn't seen it coming, but I'm thinking to myself, you know, he's walking in the middle of the road, and it's just not a safe position for him to be in. And it seems like he's been there for hours, just stepping in amongst cars. And of course, he had paranoid schizophrenia, and there's no telling what he was thinking. And it's just been so weird, you know? But it's just part of the way I believe, part of the way I think, you know, that there's rhyme and reason to life, you know. Even when it seems like there isn't any rhyme or reason to life, I believe that there's a grand narrative there, you know, and we're each a part of it, you know. And I read these near-death experiences and all the rest of it, and when people have these big traumatic experiences happen to them, they do say, you know, that they encounter wonderful things, and sometimes people convey the fact that they felt they had a choice as to whether they wanted to stay or whether they wanted to go back, or, you know. And I mean, I guess you don't get that choice if you fall into a volcano. You know what I mean? I'm guessing your options are limited at that point. But, you know, from an accident like this, he could have been, you know, he could have chosen yes and made a recovery of sorts. I don't know. Stranger things have happened, but I don't know, man. Like, I'm not distressed. I'm not distressed, and I'm curious about that in myself. Like, sure, there's been times where I've been sad, but it's not. It's kind of like what it says in the Bible, you know. It's like a mourn, but it's different. It's just this tangible difference that I feel like I should bring myself to be heaving with tears, but I can't do it because I don't believe in that. I don't believe in that kind of mourning anymore. I don't think I believe in that for anyone, and it makes me feel like I'm not human. You know, like, 'cause my reaction isn't as visceral, as primal. And if you saw me in you know, relative company, if other people crying and stuff like that, and is that the way it should be? Am I a bastard because I'm not crying about these things? And it's like, no. I mean, I know where I come from. I know what I'm thinking. And yeah, I don't know, man. I believe that my brother's not, you know, vanquished out of existence. I believe that there's more to his story, to our story, you know, because that fate will befall us all. That's how it happens, you know. One day you're walking through life and then you're gone. You know, that's my brother, someone I grew up with, you know, and that's his life over. So yeah, what can you take away from that experience? Well, to be honest, there was a lot of things at play there. There was mental health problems. I phoned up and I said, look, I need help. My brother needs help. And they wouldn't give it to him, and he wouldn't get it himself. So there seems to be a wee issue there with mental health provision. Someone with paranoid schizophrenia can just go about their business a hazard to themselves and others, and nothing gets done about it until something big happens. And that big thing can sometimes lead to the demise of that person or potentially others. So there's something there that needs to get worked out. That's one thing that we can take away from it. The other's just general, highway safety, and then deeper than that, just a question of what you believe in, how do you navigate your life? How do you take courage in times of sorrow? The Lord is my shepherd, I'll not want. He makes me lie. He makes me down to lie in pastures green. He leadeth me the quiet waters by. My soul he doth restore again, and me to walk doth make within the paths of righteousness, even for his own name's sake. Yet though I walk in death's dark vale, yet will I fear none ill, for thou art with me, and thy rod and staff me comfort still. My table thou hast furnished in presence of my foes. My head thou dost with oil anoint, and my cup overflows. Goodness and mercy all my life shall surely follow me, and in God's house forevermore my dwelling place shall be. Yep, and that's the way I take it. So that's an hour. That's long enough for this video. Again, it was quite forensic and dry, I suppose, but I just, I don't think I could read that just sitting my lonesome. I just wanted to make a wee note, a wee bit of real life, But as I say, this is a Christian channel, and this is how this Christian deals with that grief. It's swallowed up in victory, man. It is genuinely swallowed up in victory. I'm not delusional, I'm not behaving in any kind of erratic way. I'm at peace with this, a very profound peace, And while I still have a reaction towards death, the mystery of it is great, and it can be an intimidating thing at the core of me. I'm okay with it. I'm okay with this. It's a little, but I'm okay with it. There's a very visceral naturalness to hang on to life, but beyond that, I'm good with it. Really, I am. So, yeah, that's all I've got to say here. Life is a fickle thing. Let's make the most of it and celebrate it, enjoy it. God bless every single one of you, and I'll go back into some prophecy again tomorrow. I thought I'd go after the atheists today, just to see if I could attract them to dislike my video. They hate me. They hate me when I make an atheist video, but that's fine. All right, guys. Thank you very much for watching. God bless you. All the best.